She didn't know why the room went silent until Chicago's most dangerous man looked straight at her. And maybe that is the scariest kind of moment, not the one where danger screams, but the one where it notices you. Clara Hayes only came to the wedding to survive one evening. One glass of champagne. One polite smile. One quiet escape before her family could pull her back into the world she had spent years running from. But under the chandeliers of a downtown Chicago ballroom, every voice died when Cade Mercer walked in. Men lowered their eyes. Her father stopped breathing, and Clara, standing in a blue dress she suddenly regretted wearing, felt his gaze land on her like a loaded gun. Stay with this story, because this is not just about love. It is about power, choice, obsession, and the price of belonging. Like this video and comment where you're watching from before the silence breaks. The silence did not stay in the ballroom. It followed Clara Hayes out through the revolving doors of the Blackstone down Michigan Avenue and into the cold Chicago night, like a second shadow. By Monday morning, she had almost convinced herself she had imagined it. Almost. Her apartment in Logan Square looked exactly the way she had left it. A chipped blue mug beside the sink. A wool coat hanging from the back of a chair. Sketches taped crookedly above her desk. The radiator hissed under the window with its usual bad temper, and the neighbor upstairs walked across the floorboards like he was dragging furniture with his feet. It was ordinary. That was why Clara loved it. Ordinary meant no men in dark suits waiting outside the door. Ordinary meant no whispered conversations stopping when she entered a room. Ordinary meant no father looking at her like she was an investment that had gone bad. She sat at her desk with a cup of coffee going cold beside her hand and opened the logo files for a bakery in Wicker Park. The client wanted something warm, clean, feminine, but not too sweet. Clara stared at the soft sketches on her screen and tried to care about flourishes, spacing, and color balance. Instead, she kept seeing Cade Mercer. Not his whole face, just his eyes. The way they had found her across the ballroom, as if every other person in the room had been erased. She clicked the cursor into a blank note and typed one sentence. Why did he look at me like that? Then she deleted it so fast her finger slipped. The phone rang. Clara jumped hard enough to knock her knee against the desk. It was Molly. For a second, Clara considered letting it go to voicemail. She had no patience for wedding talk, not after the way the night had ended. But Molly had always been kind to her. Soft in a family that treated softness like a defect. Clara answered. "Hey, you left without saying goodbye," Molly said. There was no anger in her voice. Only hurt, which was worse. Clara leaned back in the chair and closed her eyes. "I'm sorry. I felt sick. That's funny." Noah said the same thing. Clara opened her eyes. The radiator clicked. A bus sighed at the curb outside. "Noah talked to you. He told me not to bother you for a few days." Molly's voice lowered. "Clara, what happened?" "Nothing. That's not true." Clara looked at the sketches on the wall. 3 years ago, she had taped them there after a good client meeting and told herself she had finally built a life no one could take from her. Now the paper seemed thin. "Molly," Clara said carefully, "your wedding was beautiful. Don't do that. Do what sound like Aunt Denise when she's lying through her teeth." Despite everything, Clara almost smiled. On the other end, Molly exhaled. Was it Cade Mercer? The name moved through the room like a draft. Clara did not answer right away. Molly understood anyway. "He wasn't supposed to come," she said. "At least not openly. Dad said there were meetings happening, but I thought that meant after the reception. Not there. Not in front of everyone." Clara pushed her coffee away. "What kind of meetings, I don't know. Elliot doesn't tell me much yet." Yet. That single word said more about Molly's marriage than all the white flowers and champagne towers ever could. Molly, Clara said, "Are you happy?" The line went quiet. Outside, someone laughed on the sidewalk. A dog barked. A train rolled faintly in the distance, metal crying against metal. "I'm learning how to be," Molly said. Clara hated how familiar that sounded. After the call ended, she worked for 6 straight hours and completed almost nothing. She adjusted the same curve on the same letter until the shape stopped looking like a letter at all. By late afternoon, the sun had dropped behind the rooftops and turned her apartment amber. She shut the laptop, grabbed her coat, and walked to the cafe on Milwaukee, where she did half her work and most of her pretending. The cafe smelled like burnt espresso cinnamon wet coats and overheated milk. A student sat near the window with textbooks spread like evidence. 2 nurses in blue scrubs leaned over paper cups and whispered about a supervisor they hated. Someone at the counter complained about oat milk. Clara breathed it in and felt her shoulders lower. This was real. This was hers. She ordered a latte and took the corner table beneath the framed photograph of the old Logan Square monument. She opened her laptop again and forced herself into the bakery logo. This time, the work began to move. Line by line, shape by shape. The world narrowed to balance and contrast, and for a while Clara forgot the wedding. Until she saw the black SUV across the street. It was parked in a loading zone engine running windows too dark for the gray evening. Nothing about it was illegal enough to matter. Nothing about it was normal enough to ignore. Clara stared at it through the cafe glass. A man stepped between her and the window waiting for his drink, and when he moved away, the SUV was still there. Her first thought was her father. Richard Hayes had never liked not knowing where his daughter was. When she first left home, he sent men to stand outside her design school, outside her first apartment, outside the grocery store. He called it concern. Clara called it surveillance. They had fought about that for 6 months until she changed neighborhoods, changed numbers, and stopped answering the door. But this felt different. Her father's men were lazy with fear. They wanted to be seen because being seen was the point. This SUV waited like it did not care whether she noticed. Clara closed her laptop and stood. The student looked up as her chair scraped the floor. She walked out without finishing her latte. Cold air hit her face. The streetlights had flickered on glowing gold against damp pavement. Chicago in October had a way of making every sidewalk look like the opening shot of a crime scene. Clara turned left instead of right. The SUV did not move at first. She told herself to keep walking. She passed the bookstore, the closed tailor, the liquor store with neon signs buzzing in the window. She stopped at a crosswalk, even though there were no cars, and looked in the dark glass of a bus shelter. The SUV rolled slowly along the curb half a block behind her. Her pulse climbed into her throat. She cut down a side street lined with brick 2 flats and bare trees. A woman came out of a building carrying groceries. A man in a bear's jacket talked loudly into his phone. Normal people, normal life. Clara held on to that. She refused to run. Running made you pray. Her father had taught her that before she was old enough to understand why a child would need to know it. At her building, she fumbled only once with the keys. The lock stuck like always. She shoved her shoulder against the front door and slipped inside. The lobby smelled like dust mail and old heat. She climbed to the 3rd floor without turning on the stairwell light. By the time she reached her apartment, her breath was coming too fast. She unlocked the door, stepped inside, and shut all 3 locks behind her. Only then did she let herself shake. Her apartment was dark. The city glow pressed against the windows. Her laptop bag slid off her shoulder and hit the floor. She stood in the center of the room listening. Nothing. No footsteps outside. No voices below. No sound except the radiator and the distant rush of traffic. She crossed to the window and pulled the curtain back with 2 fingers. The black SUV was parked across the street. Clara let the curtain fall. Her phone rang. She nearly dropped it. Unknown number. The screen lit her hand pale blue. She stared at it. The phone rang again. No, she whispered. It rang a 3rd time. Clara answered. For a moment there was only silence. Then a man's voice said, "You take the long way home when you know you're being followed." Clara's blood went cold. She knew that voice. She had heard it only once in a ballroom full of frozen people, but her body remembered it before her mind caught up. Cade Mercer. I was wondering whether you'd say my name like a curse or a question. She gripped the phone tighter. Are you outside my apartment? No. Your men are? Yes. The honesty was so clean it felt obscene. Clara walked backward until her hip hit the edge of the desk. Call them off. I will. When I know you're safe. I am safe. You live on the 3rd floor of a building with a broken front lock and a landlord who thinks a security camera from 2009 counts as protection. Her mouth went dry. You checked my building, I own your building. Clara stopped breathing. Cade continued calm as winter. Not personally. One of my companies does. The paperwork is boring. The effect is useful. You're insane. People say that when they mean thorough. No, I mean insane. A faint silence followed. She could almost feel his amusement through the line. You're angry, he said. You had me followed. Yes. You looked into my home. Yes. You bought my building. I bought the debt attached to the building. There's a difference. Not to me. That is fair. The words disarmed her for half a second. Not enough to soften her. Enough to make her hate that he sounded reasonable while doing unreasonable things. What do you want? She asked. To see you without 200 witnesses pretending not to watch. No. You answer quickly, because the answer is obvious. Obvious answers are usually the least honest ones. Clara laughed once, sharp and humorless. You don't know anything about my honesty. I know you left the Hayes house at 22 with 3 suitcases and less than $2,000. I know you paid your own way through design school even though your father offered to cover it if you came home for Sunday dinners. I know you turn down clients when they ask who your family is. I know you still send Molly birthday gifts, but you never include a return address. Clara's skin crawled. It was not just information. It was intimacy stolen in pieces. Stop, she said. Cade was quiet. When he spoke again, his voice had changed. Lower, less polished. I know enough to understand you dislike cages. You don't understand anything if you think this isn't one. I did not call to frighten you. But you did. Yes, he said. I did. She waited for an apology. None came. Dinner tomorrow, he said. 8 o'clock. I said no. I heard you. Then why are you still talking? Because you're going to think about it all night. You're going to call your brother in the morning. He'll tell you I'm dangerous. He'll also tell you to go. Clara felt something twist inside her. Why would he do that? Because Noah understands that an invitation from me is better than interest without one. The line went silent for 1 beat. Then Cade said, Wear something you chose for yourself. He hung up. Clara lowered the phone slowly. The apartment felt smaller than it had 5 minutes ago. Not because anything had changed, because she now understood how easily it could be entered, studied, owned. She did not sleep. At 3 in the morning, she sat on the floor beside her bed with the lights off and a kitchen knife resting on her knee, feeling foolish and terrified in equal measure. At 7, she called Noah. He answered in a voice rough with sleep. Clara, he called. Noah was awake immediately. What did he say? He wants dinner. A pause. Clara closed her eyes. Tell me not to go, she said. Noah did not answer. The silence hurt more than fear. Noah, I can't. She stood suddenly furious. You told me to leave the wedding. You looked like you were going to drag me out by the arm. That was before he made contact. That makes no sense. It makes perfect sense in his world. I am not in his world." Noah sighed, and in that sound Clara heard the years between them. All the things he had stayed close enough to learn. All the things she had run far enough to forget. "You were born in it," he said. "So was I. You can move apartments, change numbers, build websites for yoga studios. It doesn't erase your last name. I left. You left the house. You didn't leave the map." Clara pressed her hand to her forehead. The radiator hissed behind her like something alive. Noah's voice softened. "Listen to me. Cade Mercer is not Dad. He doesn't bluff because he doesn't need to. He doesn't chase unless he already knows the route. If he's asking you to dinner, it means he is making an effort to look civilized." "That is horrifying." "Yes. And you still think I should go?" "I think you should hear what he wants while he's willing to say it across a table." Clara looked toward the window. Morning light was beginning to gray the glass. "What if he wants me?" Noah said nothing. That was answer enough. At 8 that night, a black sedan waited at the curb, not the SUV. This car was sleeker, lower too clean for her street. The driver stood beside the back door in a dark coat, hands folded in front of him. Clara watched from her window. She had changed clothes 4 times. A black dress felt like surrender. Jeans felt childish. Red felt like a dare she did not want to make. In the end, she wore cream trousers, a black silk blouse, and a camel coat belted at the waist. Her hair was loose. Her makeup was simple. She looked like herself on a good day, which was more courage than she expected to have. When she stepped outside, the driver opened the door. "Miss Hayes." She stopped beside him. "Do you have a name, Mason? Do you always work for men who stalk women into dinner?" His expression did not change, but something almost like respect moved through his eyes. "No, ma'am. Only the complicated ones." Clara got into the car. The ride was silent. Chicago slid past the tinted windows in wet flashes, corner stores, brownstones, underpasses tagged with graffiti. Then the streets widened, the buildings sharpened, and the river appeared between towers of glass and steel. The car stopped outside a restaurant with no name on the door. Inside, the host did not ask for a reservation. He only looked at Mason and stepped aside. Clara followed him through a dining room filled with people who pretended not to stare. Candlelight floated over white tablecloths. Low voices moved like smoke. Somewhere silver tapped porcelain. At the back of the restaurant, Mason opened a heavy wooden door. Cade Mercer stood when she entered. That small act annoyed her. It was too graceful, too controlled, too close to manners. He wore a charcoal suit tonight, no tie again, white shirt open at the throat. The scar near his mouth caught the warm light and disappeared when he turned. "Clara," he said. She stayed by the door. "Mr. Mercer." "Cade?" "No." His mouth curved slightly. "Not yet, then." Mason closed the door behind her. The sound was soft, final. Clara looked at the table. 2 settings, water already poured, wine unopened, no one else in the room. Cade gestured to the chair across from him. "Sit, please. I prefer standing when I'm angry." "Then stand." That surprised her. He sat first. For a few seconds, neither of them moved. Clara had imagined him filling the silence with commands. He did not. He waited. That made the room harder to survive. Finally, she crossed to the chair and sat. A waiter entered without speaking, placed a small plate of bread on the table and vanished. Clara looked after him. "Does everyone around you move like they're afraid of making noise?" "Most people make too much noise. Convenient philosophy for a man who scares rooms quiet." Cade studied her. "You noticed that. Everyone noticed that." "Yes," he said. "But you hated it." Clara picked up the water glass just to have something to do with her hands. "Why am I here? Because I asked. No. That is why the car came. It is not why I got into it. Cade leaned back in his chair. The candlelight made his eyes look darker than they had at the wedding. Then why did you? Clara hated that the truth rose before she could stop it. Because my brother sounded afraid. Cade nodded once, as if that answer mattered. Noah has good instincts. Noah grew up surrounded by men like you. There are no men like me. The words were quiet, not arrogant, simple. Clara looked at him for a long moment. That might be the worst thing you could have said. It was not meant to comfort you. Do you ever try to comfort people? Rarely. Why, I'm usually the reason they need it. The room seemed to tighten around that sentence. Clara looked away first. Dinner arrived in courses she barely tasted, some kind of delicate fish, greens dressed in lemon, pasta folded around ricotta and herbs. Cade did not push wine on her. When she declined, he nodded and drank water too. That irritated her almost as much as the stalking. He asked about her work. At first she gave short answers. Small business branding, websites, visual identity, client strategy. He listened. Really listened. Not the way men listened when waiting for a chance to talk again. Cade watched her with unsettling focus, asking questions that slipped under her prepared responses. What makes a good logo? Clarity. Clara said. That sounds insufficient. It is. A good logo has to be simple enough to remember and specific enough to feel inevitable. Inevitable, he repeated. Yes. Like it was always supposed to look that way. Cade glanced at the untouched wine bottle. Power is similar. Of course you would say that. It's true. The most effective power feels natural to the people obeying it. They stop questioning who arranged the room. Clara's fork paused. And you arrange rooms? Yes, at weddings too. His eyes returned to hers. I did not arrange that room. No. You only killed it. For the first time, Cade smiled. It changed his face in a way Clara disliked because it made him look almost human. Your father said you were difficult. My father says that about any woman who speaks in full sentences. Richard underestimates you. Clara felt an old anger stir. Richard does not know me, because you made sure of it. That sounds like judgment. It was admiration. She had no ready answer for that. Cade reached for his water. The movement pulled his cuff back just enough for Clara to see a thin scar along his wrist. Not decorative, not old enough to be forgotten. He saw her notice. Knife, he said. I didn't ask. You wanted to. I know better than to ask men like you about scars. His gaze sharpened. Men like me. Yes. And what are men like me? Clara set her fork down. Dangerous, used to getting what they want, convinced that honesty excuses cruelty. The silence after that felt different from the ballroom. Smaller, hotter. Cade looked at her as if she had placed a hand against a locked door and found the one weak hinge. You're not wrong, he said. Again, no apology. Again, the truth. Clara hated how much more frightening that was. She leaned back. Why me? Cade did not pretend to misunderstand. He looked at her for so long that Clara felt the question expose more than she intended. Because you left, he said. That's it, no. Then say the rest. You left a family that could have given you money, status, protection, a place at every table worth sitting at in this city. You walked away and chose rent payments, cheap, furniture, difficult clients, and a name on a business card no one fears. You make it sound stupid. I make it sound rare. Clara's throat tightened before she could stop it. Cade continued, voice lower now. Most people sell themselves for safety. You gave safety away to keep yourself. I wanted to know what kind of woman does that. And now that you know I don't. The answer was immediate. Honest. almost soft. "That is why you are still here," he said. Clara looked down at her hands. They were clenched in her lap. "You had me followed," she said. "Yes. You invaded my life." "Yes. You scared me." "Yes. Do you regret it?" Cade was quiet long enough that the candle flame shivered between them. "I regret that my interest has consequences before I understand it." "That is not the same thing." "No. Can you say you're sorry?" His jaw tightened. For the first time all night, something like discomfort moved through him. "I can say that I should have approached you differently, but you wouldn't have." "No," he said. "I would have done exactly what I did." Clara pushed back her chair. Cade did not move. She stood, heart pounding. "You are impossible. I've been called worse. I'm sure you earned it." His eyes flashed not with anger exactly, but with something alive enough to make her pulse stumble. "Yes," he said. "I did." Clara reached for her coat. "Dinner is over." Cade stood then, not to stop her, only because she had. "Mason will take you home. I can get my own ride." "I know." "Then why offer because it's late, and men who are not me are sometimes worse than me?" The line was absurd, terrible, almost funny in a way she refused to acknowledge. She put on her coat. At the door, his voice stopped her. "Clara." She turned, despite herself. Cade stood beside the table, hands at his sides, his face unreadable. "I won't have anyone outside your apartment tonight." She did not trust the relief that moved through her. "Is that supposed to make you decent?" "No," he said. "Only accurate." Clara left without answering. Mason drove her home in silence. This time, the city looked less like a place she belonged to and more like a map other people had drawn under her feet. At her building, she got out before Mason could open the door. The black SUV was gone. No men stood under the streetlights. No engine idled across the block. No shadow moved when she looked up and down the sidewalk. For one brief moment, Clara felt the shape of her old life return. Then she realized she was disappointed. That was the part that frightened her most. Inside her apartment, she locked the door and stood in the dark, still wearing her coat. The room smelled faintly of coffee paper and old heat. Her laptop waited on the desk. The bakery logo waited with it. A life waited too plain and narrow and hers. Her phone stayed silent. Clara told herself that was good. She brushed her teeth, washed her face, changed into an old sweatshirt, turned off the lights. Still, when she lay in bed, she did not think about the SUV. She thought about Cade standing when she entered the room. She thought about him drinking water because she did. She thought about the scar on his wrist and the way he had not hidden it. She thought about his voice saying, "I wanted to know what kind of woman does that." At 2 a.m, rain started tapping against the window. Clara turned onto her side and stared at the dark shape of her apartment. For years, she had believed freedom meant no one looking for her. Now, against every instinct she trusted, she wondered what it meant that someone had. By morning, she opened her laptop and tried to work. The bakery logo looked wrong, too delicate, too polite, too safe. She deleted the design and started over. This time, she drew something bolder. A mark with sharp edges hidden inside soft curves. Something warm at first glance, but stronger the longer you looked. Her hand moved quickly. The work came clean. Outside, traffic rolled through wet streets. A siren wailed somewhere far away. A train passed. Life went on with its usual indifference. At noon, an email arrived from a client she had been courting for months. The subject line was short. Project paused. Clara opened it. The message was polite, vague, and final. Budget changes, internal shifts, maybe another time. She read it twice, then a third time. There was nothing suspicious in the words. That was what made it suspicious. Her phone rang before she could decide whether to be angry or afraid. Unknown number. She stared at the screen. This time she answered on the first ring. Cade said, "Before you accuse me, I did not tell them to drop you." Clara closed her eyes. "But you know they did." "Yes." "How?" "Because someone asked about you this morning." Her fingers went cold around the phone. Who, a man connected to the Kincaid crew? The name meant nothing and everything. It had the shape of a warning. Cade's voice lowered. "You wanted no one watching your apartment. I respected that. But Clara, the moment people saw me look at you, you stopped being invisible." She stood slowly from her desk. Across the room, the curtains moved in the weak draft from the window frame. "I didn't ask for this. I know. I didn't ask for you." Another pause. "No," Cade said. "You didn't." Clara looked at the new logo on her screen, all those sharp edges disguised as beauty. "What happens now?" For once, Cade did not answer right away. When he did, his voice was quiet enough to make her listen harder. "Now you decide whether you still want to pretend the room went silent for no reason." Clara kept the phone pressed to her ear long after Cade stopped speaking. She could hear him breathe once, slow and controlled, as if even silence obeyed him. "I don't pretend," she said. "Yes, you do." The words struck harder than they should have. Clara stood in the middle of her apartment with the rain thinning against the window and her laptop glowing on the desk behind her. The paused project email remained open. The polite lie of it sat there in clean black letters. "You don't know me well enough to say that. I know you built a life small enough that no one from your father's world would bother reaching into it." Her throat tightened. "That's not pretending. That's survival." "Maybe." The softness of that one word irritated her more than arrogance would have. She crossed to the window and looked down at the street. No SUV, no idling car, no man under a street lamp pretending to check his phone. For the first time since the wedding, her block looked normal. That should have comforted her. It did not. "Why would the Kincaids ask about me?" she asked. "Because people saw me look at you." "That is insane." "That is Chicago." "No," she said. "Chicago is traffic, bad weather, overpriced cocktails, and people arguing about pizza. This is not Chicago. This is your world." Cade was silent for a moment. Then he said, "You're right." The admission unbalanced her. Clara turned from the window. "Then keep your world away from me. I tried for 3 days. You call that trying?" "For me? Yes." She almost laughed, but there was nothing funny in the cold knot under her ribs. "I can't do this," she said. "You don't know what this is yet." "And whose fault is that?" The line went quiet. When Cade spoke again, his voice had lost its polished edge. "Come to the river warehouse tonight." "No." "Not dinner. Not a command. A conversation." "I don't trust your conversations." "Good. Bring that." Clara rubbed a hand over her face. She should hang up. She should call Noah. She should pack a bag and leave the city for a week, maybe a month, maybe forever. Instead, she asked, "Why there?" "Because it's mine." "That's not reassuring." "No," he said. "But it's honest." The words sat between them like a match held too close to gasoline. Clara looked at the laptop again, at the logo she had redrawn into something sharper, at the apartment she had chosen piece by piece, at the life that suddenly seemed less like freedom and more like a door with a weak lock. "I'll come," she said, hating the steadiness in her own voice. "But I drive myself. You don't have a car." She closed her eyes. "Of course you know that. Mason will wait downstairs." "I said I would come. I didn't say I would be delivered." Another pause. Then Cade said, "Take a cab. Text me the plate number. I'm not texting you anything. Then, text Noah. That was the first thing he said that made sense. Clara hung up before he could say anything else. The river warehouse sat in an industrial stretch west of downtown, where old brick buildings faced the water with the tired patience of men who had seen too many things and kept their mouths shut. The cab dropped Clara beneath a rusted street lamp. Wind moved over the river, wet and metallic. The building looked abandoned from the outside. No sign, no music, no warmth, just dark windows and a steel door. Clara paid the driver and stood on the sidewalk until the cab disappeared around the corner. For one brief, ridiculous moment, she wanted to chase it. The steel door opened before she knocked. Mason stood inside. "Miss Hayes." "Mason." He stepped aside. She entered. The inside of the warehouse did not match the outside. The ceiling rose 3 stories above polished concrete floors. Old brick walls had been cleaned but not softened. Steel beams cut through the space like black ribs. Tall windows faced the river, their glass dark with night. There were no guards visible. That meant there were guards everywhere. Cade stood near the far wall beneath a hanging industrial light, reading a paperback with one hand in his pocket. He wore no suit jacket tonight. Just a white shirt with the sleeves rolled to his forearms and black trousers. Without the armor of a tailored jacket, he looked more human. Not safer. Just more real. Clara stopped 10 feet away. "You read a lot for a criminal." Cade looked up. "You insult people quickly for a designer." "I'm adaptable. So I've noticed." He closed the book around one finger to mark the page. "What is it?" she asked, despite herself. "Poetry. That surprises me. It surprises everyone who thinks violence and language don't come from the same hunger." She folded her arms. "That sounds like something men say when they want murder to sound educated." Cade's mouth shifted. Not a smile. Close. Fair. Clara glanced around the room. A leather sofa near the windows. A long table scattered with blueprints. A bar cart untouched in the corner. A painting leaned against one wall, still wrapped in brown paper. "This place doesn't feel finished," she said. "It isn't. What is it supposed to be?" Cade looked around as if seeing the building through her eyes. A place no one can enter without permission. A fortress. A home, maybe. The word landed strangely. Clara did not like the way it softened the concrete. "Why did you bring me here?" Cade set the book on the table. "Because you asked me to keep my world away from you. And this is your answer. This is where I can show you the edges of it." She stared at him. "You think showing me makes it better?" "No. I think letting you imagine it makes it worse." Wind pressed faintly against the windows. Somewhere in the building, metal creaked. Clara stepped closer, slow enough to pretend she had control over it. "You had me followed. You found my clients. You knew my apartment. Now a rival crew knows my name because you looked at me in a room full of people who were trained to notice everything." "Yes. Stop saying yes like it absolves you. It doesn't. Then what does it do? It keeps us from wasting time." That lit anger through her chest. "You are unbelievable. I've been called worse tonight. By who myself?" The answer stopped her. For the first time, Cade looked away before she did. His gaze moved to the river beyond the glass. "I should not have let them see it." See what he looked back. "That I wanted you." The bluntness of it went through her like heat. Clara hated him for saying it that way. Hated the room for going still around the words. Hated herself because part of her wanted him to say it again. "You don't know me," she said. "No, you can't want me. That's not how wanting works. It should be. Most things should be better than they are." Clara laughed under her breath. "That is the closest thing to a normal opinion you've had." Cade stepped around the table, careful, unhurried. He stopped far enough away that she did not have to move. I want to court you. The word sounded ancient in his mouth. Clara blinked. Court me? Yes. Are you from 1947? My grandmother would be pleased you noticed. That was not a compliment. It didn't need to be. She stared at him. You stalked me into a date and now you want to court me. I handled the beginning badly. Badly. Yes. That's your word. I'm choosing a restrained one. Her anger should have sharpened. Instead, it wavered because he was not smiling now. He was not playing with her. The control in his face had become something tighter, something almost unsure. Clara took a breath. If you want to see me again, there are rules. Cade nodded once. Name them. No surveillance. His jaw moved. No men outside my building, no one watching me work, no one following me to the grocery store. If there's an active threat, I need to know where you are. Then ask. That may not always be fast enough. Then you'll have to learn patience. A quiet passed through him. Clara continued before she could lose nerve. No contacting my clients. No buying anything connected to me. No speaking to my landlord. No showing up uninvited. No using Noah to get information. No deciding what is best for me and calling it protection. Cade watched her with an expression she could not read. That is a long list. It can get longer. I believe you. And if I say no, it means no. His eyes held hers. I know what no means, Clara. Do you? The question struck something. His face did not change, but the room seemed to. Yes, he said quietly. I do. She believed him. That was inconvenient. Cade looked toward the river again, then back at her. I have terms too. Clara gave a humorless smile. Of course you do. If the Kincaids approach you, you tell me. I tell Noah. You tell Noah and me. No. Clara. No. You don't get to become the first number I call just because you decided I matter. His eyes darkened. If someone means to hurt you because of me, I have the right to respond. You have the right to feel guilty. That's different. The silence after that was sharp enough to cut. Mason shifted somewhere near the entrance. Clara had forgotten he was there. Cade did not look away from her. Then slowly he nodded. Fine. That sounded painful. It was. Good. This time he did smile barely. Dinner Saturday. Clara should have refused. She thought about the SUV, the phone call, the email from the client, the way Cade admitted terrible things without wrapping them in pretty lies. She thought about the ballroom. She thought about being seen. Dinner, she said. Public place. I choose it. Done. And no private room. A pause. Define public. People. Tables. Witnesses. Noise. His expression suggested noise was an unreasonable demand. Fine, he said. Clara turned to leave before she could change her mind about anything. At the door, she glanced back. Cade had picked up the poetry book again, but he was not reading. He was watching her go like he already knew she would look back. That made her angry enough to leave faster. Saturday dinner was at a crowded Italian place in Andersonville, where the tables sat too close together and the waiters shouted over the sound of plates and laughter. Clara chose it because no one there cared who Cade Mercer was. At least that was what she told herself. Within 10 minutes, the owner came to their table personally and asked if everything was satisfactory. Cade looked at Clara before answering. It's perfect, he said. The owner nearly bowed. Clara waited until he left. You own this place too? No. Does he owe you money? No. Then why is he sweating? Because he knows someone who knows someone. That is not a normal answer. It's a Chicago answer. She wanted to be irritated. She was. But Cade looked almost out of place beneath the noisy lights folded into a chair too small for him, his expensive coat hanging beside hers on a wooden peg. He did not complain about the noise. He did not request a better table. He let her choose the wine, then drank what she picked. They talked. Not about families. Not about territory. About work. Clara told him about difficult clients, ugly fonts, and people who wanted logos to look modern, but also timeless, but also vintage, but also fresh. Cade listened with the intensity of a man studying a map before a war. "You're laughing," she said at one point. "I am. You look surprised by it." "I don't do it often." "That sounds lonely." His fingers stilled around his glass. For a second, she wished she could take it back. Then he said, "It is. No performance, no self-pity. Just truth." After dinner, they walked 2 blocks in the cold. Cade kept his hands in his coat pockets. He did not touch her. Not once. When a drunk man stumbled too close outside a bar, Cade moved half a step between them without seeming to move at all. Clara noticed. "Was that for me or for you?" Cade glanced down at her. "Both. At least you're learning." "I'm trying." The words were simple. They hit harder than they should have. Over the following weeks, dinner became coffee. Coffee became an afternoon at the Art Institute, where Cade stood in front of a Rothko painting for almost 10 minutes without speaking. Clara watched him instead of the art. "What do you see?" she asked. "Restraint," he said. She looked at the blocks of color. "That's it." "No." "I see someone trying to make silence visible." Clara turned back to the painting. For once, she did not know what to say. Another night, he took her to the symphony. Clara wore a black dress, this time plain and fitted. Cade arrived at her building and waited outside exactly as instructed. No coming up, no driver at the door, no surprise. When she stepped out, his face changed. Only slightly. "Enough." "You look beautiful," he said. She looked at the black car behind him. "Is Mason driving?" "Yes." "Is anyone following us?" "No." "Are you lying?" "No." She studied him. Cade let her. That became the dangerous thing about him. Not the power, not the money, not the way rooms adjusted around him. It was the patience, the way he allowed her suspicion to exist without punishing it, the way he made room for her anger and still waited beside it. At the symphony, he held her coat. During the second movement, his hand rested on the armrest between them. Open. Still. Not touching. Clara looked at it for a full minute. Then she placed her hand in his. Cade did not move at first. Then his fingers closed around hers with such care that her chest ached. The music rose. Clara kept her eyes on the orchestra and told herself this was not surrender. But when he rubbed his thumb once across her knuckles, slow and almost reverent, she forgot the argument she had been having with herself. The city noticed them. Of course it did. A photograph appeared in a society column the next morning. Cade Mercer and unidentified woman leaving the Chicago Symphony. Clara stared at the image on her phone while standing in line for coffee. Unidentified woman. She laughed once. Then she saw the second message. Noah. "Call me." She did. He answered immediately. "You were photographed with him. Good morning to you too." "This is not funny. I didn't say it was. You don't understand what public means with a man like Cade." Clara stepped out of the cafe line and moved toward the window. "What does it mean, Noah?" "It means people stop guessing. It means they start planning." Her stomach tightened. "Planning what?" "How to use you. How to test him. How to insult your father through you. How to reach Cade without walking through his front door." Clara looked outside at the ordinary sidewalk, the morning commuters, the wet shine of the street. "I'm not a message." "No," Noah said. "But he is making you one." The words stayed with her all day. That night, Cade came to her apartment for the first time because she invited him. He stood in the doorway without crossing the threshold until she stepped back. The apartment looked smaller with him inside. Not worse, just altered. He took in the couch, the sketches, the old radiator, the plants on the sill. "This is very you," he said. "You don't know what very me is." "I'm learning." She hated that the answer warmed her. They ate takeout on the floor because her table was covered in sketches. Cade loosened his cuffs and sat with his back against the couch, long legs bent awkwardly, looking like a king forced into civilian clothes. Clara laughed. "What, you look uncomfortable?" "I'm fine. You look like the floor insulted your bloodline. The floor and I have reached an understanding." For a while it felt almost normal. Then her phone buzzed. A client email. She opened it, read it, and felt the blood drain from her face. "What is it?" Cade asked. "Nothing." His expression changed. "Clara." She looked at him. "Don't do that. Do what say my name like you already have the right to worry." He went still. She regretted it immediately, then hated that too. "It's a client," she said. "They want to postpone the launch. They got nervous after someone asked questions about me." Cade's face emptied. That was when she knew. "You did something she said. I had Mason make inquiries." Clara stood. Cade rose more slowly. "You promised." "I promised not to interfere without cause." "No. You promised not to contact my clients. They were approached by Kincaid people. So you approached them too. I needed to know if they were a risk. They are a florist opening a second location. They share a silent investor with a man who moves money for Wyatt Kincaid." "You hear yourself, right?" Clara's voice shook now. "You hear how insane my life sounds because you looked at me at a wedding." Cade's jaw tightened. "This was always your life. I only made it visible." "No," she said. "That is what men like you do. You break something, then tell people it was already cracked." The words hit him. She saw it. For 1 second, the control slipped. Then it returned colder. "I am trying to keep you alive. I was alive before you. You were hidden. I was free." "Were you?" he asked. The question was quiet. Cruel because it was not meant to be. Clara stepped back as if he had touched her. Cade saw it and went still. She pointed to the door. "Leave." He did not move. Not at first. The room held its breath. Then Cade picked up his coat from the chair. At the door he turned. "I will call Mason off your clients. I don't want Mason near my clients. I don't want your protection. I don't want your world deciding what parts of my life survive." Cade looked at her with something raw moving behind his eyes. "And me?" Clara's throat closed. She hated him for asking. She hated herself for not knowing the answer fast enough. "I don't know," she said. Cade nodded once. That was all. Then he left. For 3 days there was nothing. No calls, no cars, no Mason, no flowers, no shadow at the corner, no presence humming beneath the surface of her life. Clara got exactly what she had demanded. She worked. She bought groceries. She walked home alone. She answered client emails and pretended not to check her phone every hour. Freedom returned in pieces. It should have felt like relief. Instead, it felt like a room after music stops. On the 3rd night, she walked past the cafe where she had first seen the SUV. The windows were fogged from the warmth inside. People sat with laptops and paper cups. A couple argued softly near the door. A woman laughed into her scarf. Clara stopped outside and looked at her reflection in the glass. She looked the same. That was the strangest part. Nothing on her face showed that she had been seen by a dangerous man and had not yet decided whether that was ruin or recognition. Her phone buzzed. Not Cade. Noah. She answered. "Are you home?" "Almost. Don't go there." Clara's body went cold. "What happened? I don't know yet. There's smoke near the river. One of Cade's warehouses is burning." For a second, the city sound vanished. Traffic moved around her. A bus sighed at the curb. Somewhere, someone shouted. Clara stared at her own reflection until it blurred. Noah's voice sharpened. "Clara, did you hear me?" She did not answer. Across the street, a black car pulled to the curb. Mason stepped out into the glow of the street lamp, his face grim, his phone already in his hand. The door opened behind him. Cade was not inside. Only the smell of smoke seemed to arrive before the night did. Clara stood on the sidewalk while Mason crossed the street toward her, his coat open, his expression carved out of stone. Behind him, the black car idled at the curb. Its windows reflected the cafe lights and the wet pavement, turning everything into broken gold. "Get in," Mason said. Clara did not move. "Where is he? At the site. Is he hurt?" Mason looked past her once, scanning the street in a way that made every parked car feel suspicious. "Not when he called me." That was not an answer. It was a knife wrapped in manners. Clara took one step back. "I'm calling Noah. You can call him from the car. I'm not going anywhere until someone tells me what happened." Mason's jaw tightened. He was not a man who wasted words, but for 1 second she saw the strain beneath his control. "One of Mr. Mercer's warehouses is burning near the river. We don't know yet if it was an attack or a message. Either way, your name has been spoken in rooms where it should not be spoken." The cold moved through her coat. "My name, yes. By who Kincaid people?" Clara looked down the street. Normal Chicago kept moving around her. A woman walked her dog. A cyclist cursed at a cab. Steam rose from a manhole in slow white ribbons. The world did not know it had shifted. Mason opened the back door. "Please," he said. That one word did what urgency could not. Clara got in. The car pulled away before she had finished fastening her seatbelt. Mason drove himself this time. No driver, no partition, no polite distance. He kept one hand on the wheel and the other near his phone, which kept lighting up with messages he did not answer. Clara watched the city smear past the window. "Is Cade coming to my apartment? No." "Then where are we going?" "The penthouse." "No." Mason did not look at her. "Yes." "I told him I did not want his protection. He heard you. Then why are you doing this?" "Because he also heard the part where someone connected to Wyatt Kincaid asked questions about you, and now one of his buildings is on fire." Clara's hands curled in her lap. "He gave you orders." "Yes." "And if I refuse?" Mason finally glanced at her in the mirror. "Then I drive slower while you refuse." She almost laughed. The sound caught in her throat and turned into something smaller. The car moved toward the river. Smoke stained the sky ahead dark against the low clouds. Police lights flickered blue and red between buildings. They passed close enough for Clara to see flames clawing out of broken windows, bright and hungry, swallowing the upper floor of an old brick warehouse. Firefighters shouted. Water struck burning wood and turned to steam. Men in dark coats stood behind the police tape too still to be bystanders. Then she saw him. Cade stood near the edge of the street, his white shirt gray with ash, his coat gone, his sleeves rolled up as if he had been working with his hands. A phone was pressed to his ear. Blood marked one knuckle. He looked calm. That was what terrified her. The car slowed. Cade turned his head. Their eyes met through the tinted glass. For 1 second, the fire, the police, the city, and Mason all disappeared. Clara saw only the look on Cade's face. Not surprise, not relief. Possession sharpened by fear. Then Mason kept driving. "No," Clara said, twisting in her seat. "Stop the car." "He told me not to stop." "I do not care what he told you. I do." Cade vanished behind smoke and flashing lights. Clara pressed a hand against the window, furious with herself for the sudden sting in her eyes. He should have come himself. Mason's voice stayed level. He wanted to. Then why didn't he? Because if he had gotten in this car, he would have gone to you instead of finishing what needed to be finished. The truth sank between them. Clara turned forward slowly. The penthouse tower rose near the river, all glass and steel, its upper floors lost in mist. Mason drove into an underground garage where two men waited by the elevator. They nodded to him. They did not speak to Clara. She hated that. Hated being handled like something fragile and expensive. Hated that she was scared enough to let it happen. The elevator climbed in silence. When the doors opened, the penthouse spread before her like a museum designed by a man who trusted nothing soft. Pale stone floors, dark wood, wide windows overlooking the city. Lake Michigan was a black sheet in the distance, restless under the storm clouds. Mason stepped inside first. "Your room is down the hall, second door on the right." "My room?" "Yes. How long has there been a room for me?" Mason paused. That was answer enough. Clara walked past him into the living room. The place smelled faintly of cedar leather and rain. No photographs, no clutter, no careless evidence that a human being lived there. Everything was exact, beautiful, controlled, like Cade. She stood before the windows and looked down at Chicago. From this height, the city looked quiet. That was the lie rich people bought for themselves, she thought. Distance made danger look decorative. Her phone rang. "Cade." She answered so quickly she hated him for it. "Are you inside?" he asked. No greeting, no apology. "Yes." "Good. No, not good. I saw you. I saw you too. You should have stopped the car. I needed you away from the fire. I needed to know you were alive." There was a pause. When he spoke again, the ice in his voice had thinned. "I am alive. Are you hurt?" "No." "Do not lie to me. I have blood on my hand. It is not serious." Clara closed her eyes. Beyond the glass, police lights still flickered in the city below, tiny and frantic. What happened? The Kincaids sent a message. With fire. With fire. With timing. With your name passing through the wrong mouth before it started. Her stomach tightened. What did they say about me? Enough. That is not an answer. It is the one I can give you while standing in front of men who are waiting for me to decide how many people die tonight. The room went very still around her. Clara opened her eyes. There he was, not the man who listened to her talk about design, not the man who held her hand at the symphony like it was something sacred. The other man, the one the ballroom had feared, the one who made silence happen. "Cade." "I know," he said, and there was something rough beneath the words. "I know what that sounded like. It sounded like the truth." "Yes." She swallowed. "Then be careful with it." For a long moment he said nothing. Then his voice lowered. "Stay away from the windows." Clara looked at her reflection in the glass. Pale face, dark eyes. A woman standing in a fortress she had not chosen. "I am not one of your men." "No," Cade said. "You are the reason I still have control right now." The words hit too deep, too fast. Before she could answer, a man spoke on Cade's end. Cade covered the phone, but Clara still heard the urgency. The name Kincaid, the phrase South Loading Bay. Then Cade came back. "Mason will show you the security panel. No one gets upstairs without my code, his code, or yours. I have a code. Your birthday. She almost laughed, but the sound would have broken. You knew my birthday before you knew my favorite coffee. I know both. The line softened around his breathing. Clara. What I am sorry for the room. She looked around the penthouse. Which room? All of them. Then he hung up. Clara stood there with the phone in her hand until Mason cleared his throat behind her. The security panel is by the hall. I know how doors work. These doors are different. She turned. Everything is different with him. Mason did not deny it. He showed her the panel, the reinforced elevator lock, the room that would be hers. It had a bed, a desk, a private bathroom, and a door with a real lock. Clara tested it twice while Mason stood in the hallway pretending not to notice. It locks from the inside, he said. Cade told you to say that no. He told me to make sure it was true. That stayed with her after Mason left. Clara did not unpack. She set her bag on the chair and walked through the penthouse barefoot, trying to understand the shape of the life Cade had built around himself. The kitchen looked unused but expensive enough to feed a family for generations. The bookshelves were carefully arranged, but the books were worn. Philosophy, poetry, history, war. In the office, maps covered one wall. Chicago broken into lines, territories, routes, names. She found the river warehouse marked in red pencil. Nearby, another mark circled a block close to her apartment. Her breath caught. She stepped closer. Logan Square. Her street. Her building. Not new. Not added tonight. The pencil mark had been there for a while. A sound came from the elevator. Clara turned. The doors opened. Cade walked in alone. His shirt was ruined ash smeared across the front. His hair was damp from rain or sweat. Blood darkened the knuckles of his right hand, and there was a shallow cut near his cheekbone. He looked at her standing in his office beside the map. Neither of them spoke. Then Clara pointed to the circle around her block. How long Cade stepped out of the elevator? The doors closed behind him. Since the night after the wedding. The answer was quiet. It still landed like a slap. You marked my home. I marked a vulnerable point. My home, she repeated. His jaw flexed. Yes. Clara walked toward him, anger rising hot enough to burn through fear. You do not get to rename parts of my life until they sound useful to you. I was not trying to insult you. You were not thinking of me at all. You were thinking like a man who owns pieces on a board. Cade took the words without moving. She stopped 2 feet from him, close enough to smell smoke on his skin. You said you were sorry for the room. Prove it. Do not make this one another cage. His gaze searched her face. I brought you here because someone may try to hurt you. You brought me here because you were afraid. Yes. The answer stole some of the force from her anger. Cade looked exhausted suddenly. Not weak. Never that. But worn down beneath the sharp edges. I am afraid, he said. There. Does that make it better? No. Good. It should not. He moved past her toward the kitchen sink and ran water over his injured hand. Red spiraled down the drain. Clara watched him from the office doorway. You should have that cleaned. I am cleaning it. With soap. He glanced at her. She opened a drawer, then another, until she found a first aid kit. Of course he had one. Of course it was fully stocked and organized with military precision. Sit down, she said. Cade's eyebrows lifted. Do not make me ask twice. Something flickered in his eyes. Amusement, maybe, or tenderness he did not know where to place. He sat at the kitchen island. Clara stood between his knees and took his hand. His knuckles were split in 2 places. The skin was swollen. He did not flinch when she cleaned the cuts, but the muscles in his forearm tightened. You hit someone, she said. Yes. Did they deserve it? Yes. That answer came too easily. They touched one of my men and set fire to a building with people inside. She looked up. Did anyone die? Cade held her gaze. One guard. His name was Luis. He had 2 daughters. The name changed the room. Not a number, not collateral. A man. 2 daughters. Clara lowered her eyes and wrapped gauze around Cade's hand more carefully. "I'm sorry," she said. "So am I." She believed that too, which made everything worse. When she finished, Cade did not pull his hand away. For a while they stayed like that, her fingers resting against his palm, his knees on either side of her legs, the city shining beyond them, indifferent and beautiful. "You should go to bed," he said. "You always say things like that when you do not know what to do with me. I know what I want to do with you." The air changed. Clara's breath caught. Cade saw it and closed his eyes for half a second as if the sight cost him. "That is why I said you should go to bed." Her pulse moved low and hard. "You are covered in smoke." "I know. You look terrible." "I know. You scared me." His eyes opened. That was the thing she had not meant to say. Not like that. Not so naked. Cade lifted his uninjured hand slowly, giving her time to step back. She did not. His fingers brushed her cheek, so light she might have imagined it. "I scared myself," he said. Clara did not know who moved first. Maybe neither of them did. The kiss began softly and turned desperate within a breath. Cade stood one hand at her waist, the other careful not to touch her with the bandaged knuckles. Clara gripped his ruined shirt and felt the heat of him beneath the smoke and blood and rain. It was not gentle. It was not safe. But it was honest. Then Cade broke away. His forehead rested against hers. His breath was rough. "No." Clara's eyes opened. "No. Not like this." She almost laughed, wounded and breathless. "You are rejecting me now. I am trying not to take comfort from you while I still smell like fire. I am not made of glass." "No," he said. "You are not. That is exactly the problem." He stepped back. The distance hurt more than it should have. Cade dragged a hand through his hair. "If I touch you tonight, I will forget to be careful. Maybe I do not want careful. You will." His voice was so certain that anger flashed through her again. "Do not tell me what I will want." Cade looked at her then, and the hunger in his face was so raw she understood the fight he was having with himself. "I am not telling you what to want," he said. "I am telling you what I am capable of tonight. And it is not enough." That left her with nothing to throw at him. He went to shower. Clara stood in the kitchen alone, her mouth still warm from his, her hands trembling for reasons that had nothing to do with fear. When she finally went to the room he had given her, she locked the door. Then she sat on the bed and cried, silently furious because she did not know whether the tears were for Luis, for herself, for Cade, or for the fact that all 3 had become tangled together. 3 days passed inside the penthouse. Outside, the city pretended nothing was happening. Inside, men came and went at odd hours. Mason spoke into his phone in low tones. Cade held meetings behind closed doors. Sometimes Clara heard names: Kincaid, Wyatt, South Docks, Union Vote, Missing Shipment. She worked from the desk in her room because she refused to stop being herself just because danger had learned her address. Cade did not push. He asked before entering her room. He did not touch her unless she touched him first. He kept his promise about her clients, though 2 more delayed projects without explanation. On the 4th evening, rain sealed the windows and turned the city silver. Clara found Cade on the terrace, enclosed in glass, sitting with a drink he had not touched. His bandaged hand rested on his knee. He looked out at Chicago like he could see every threat moving through it. She sat across from him. "You never talk about your family," she said. His mouth tightened. "No, that was not a question." "I noticed." Clara tucked her feet beneath her. "Was there ever a version of you that wanted something else?" The rain moved down the glass in crooked lines. Cade was quiet so long she thought he would not answer. Then he said, "I wanted to teach." That surprised her into stillness. What philosophy? History? Something useless enough to matter. Clara looked at him, trying to imagine him in a classroom, sleeves rolled chalk on his fingers, talking about dead men and impossible questions. What happened? My father was killed. My uncle tried to sell pieces of the organization before the funeral flowers died. Men I had known my whole life started choosing sides. I learned quickly that grief is expensive if you cannot defend it. Clara felt the words settle in her chest. How old were you? 23. Too young, she thought. Then she remembered she had been 22 when she left home with 3 suitcases and a shaking hand. Cade looked at her. What about you? I wanted to paint. Why didn't you? My father said artists starve, designers invoice. Cade's expression softened in that almost invisible way. You listened to him. I compromised with him. That sounds worse. It was. For the first time, they sat in a silence that did not feel like a weapon. Clara looked down at her hands. I spent my whole life trying to become small enough that no one powerful would need to control me. Cade's voice was low. And then, I found you. Yes. I am sorry. She looked up. The apology was simple. No defense behind it. No careful wording, no pride. It should have healed something. Instead, it opened it. I think I love you, she said. The words escaped before she could measure them, before she could make them safer. Cade went still. The whole city seemed to stop beneath them. Clara felt panic rise. I did not mean to say that. Yes, you did. I meant to think it privately until it went away. It will not go away. You do not know that. His face had changed. Control still there, but cracked by something close to fear. I know because mine has not. Clara stared at him. Cade stood and walked to the glass. He placed one hand against it, his back to her. This is dangerous. You say that about everything, because everything is dangerous. No, because if everything is dangerous, then you never have to admit what actually scares you. He turned. His eyes looked almost black in the rainlight. You scare me. The confession hit harder than any touch. Clara stood. Cade shook his head once. Stay there. No. Clara. No. I am tired of being put somewhere safe while men decide what my fear should look like. She walked to him. He did not move away. I love you, she said again, quieter this time. I do not know when it happened. I do not know what it says about me. I know I should be smarter than this. Cade's voice was rough. You are smart. That is why you should run. I am done running just because men like you make staying expensive. His hand lifted, then stopped before touching her. I do not know how to love gently. Then do not lie to me and call it gentle. Something broke in his face. He kissed her like restraint had finally run out of road. This time, he did not pull away after the first breath. He cupped her face with both hands, careful of the bandage, and Clara rose into him like she had been moving toward this since the ballroom, since the first silence, since the moment fear and recognition had become impossible to separate. Then the windows flashed white. A sound like the city splitting open slammed through the penthouse. Cade tore his mouth from hers and threw his body over hers as the glass shuddered. Car alarms screamed far below. The lights flickered once, twice, then steadied. Cade was already moving. He grabbed her hand and pulled her from the terrace. What was that close? His phone rang. Mason's voice came through loud enough for Clara to hear pieces. North Garage. Possible secondary. Kincaid's signature. Unknown shooters. Cade's face emptied of everything soft. He turned to Clara. Panic room. Now. Her blood went cold. No. His eyes locked on hers. Now. I am not hiding again. This is not a debate. It is my life. It is your life I am trying to keep inside your body. The words cracked through the room. Clara stepped back. Cade caught himself. His voice lowered, but the urgency remained. Please. That word again. The one powerful men used when they had run out of force they were willing to spend. Clara nodded. Cade led her to the bedroom, moved a painting aside, and opened a hidden door. Inside was a small room with shelves of water medical supplies, a cot monitors, and a steel door thick enough to stop the world. She looked at him from the threshold. Come with me. I cannot. You can. No. His voice softened. I am the reason they are here, and I am the reason you are about to walk into it angry. For 1 second he looked like she had struck him, then he touched her cheek. I love you. That means I need you alive more than I need to be forgiven. He stepped back. The door closed between them. The lock engaged. Clara stood in the panic room with her hand against the cold steel, listening to her own breath, the hum of monitors, and the distant violence of a city that had finally stopped pretending it was far away. Hours passed. At first she paced. Then she sat. Then she stood again because sitting felt too much like surrender. The monitors showed silent camera feeds. Hallway, elevator, garage, empty rooms washed in gray light. No Cade, no Mason. No sound from outside except a low vibration now and then too distant to name. Her phone had no signal. The clock on the wall counted every minute with cruel precision. After the second hour, Clara stopped being afraid of dying and started being afraid of waiting forever. After the fourth, she understood something with a clarity that made her stomach turn. This was the real shape of Cade's world. Not the suits, not the restaurants, not the poetry beside a river window. It was sealed doors, no answers, and love turned into something you could lose without warning. When the lock finally clicked, Clara stood so fast her knees almost failed. The door opened. Noah stood on the other side. His shirt was streaked with blood. Not his, she knew before asking. It was never theirs until it was. Where is he? Noah raised both hands. Alive. Where? Moving. We have to go. I am not leaving without him. He sent me. I do not care. Noah stepped into the room and gripped her shoulders. For once, he did not look like her older brother. He looked like the boy who had once hidden her in a closet during one of their father's meetings and told her to count backward from 100 until the shouting stopped. Clara, he said, if you stay here, Cade comes back for you before finishing this. If he comes back too soon, more people die. Maybe him. Maybe you. So move. That reached her. She hated that it did. The safe house was in Lincoln Park, behind a brownstone with flower boxes and security cameras hidden so well, Clara only noticed them because Mason had taught her to look for what seemed too ordinary. Cade arrived near dawn. Clara heard the door open and was already standing when he came in. He looked terrible. His left arm was wrapped in a dark bandage. His cheek was bruised. Ash clung to his hair. His eyes found her and held. For 1 second, neither of them moved. Then Clara crossed the room. Cade lifted a hand. Don't. She stopped. Do not tell me that. I have blood on me. I can see that. Not all of it is mine. The words hung between them. Clara walked forward anyway. This time, Cade led her. She put her arms around him carefully, and his body went rigid, as if tenderness were the one attack he had not prepared for. Then he folded around her, burying his face in her hair. I am sorry, he said. She held him tighter. I know. For the room. For the fire. for every door I have closed between you and the truth. I know. His voice broke just slightly. I thought wanting you was the dangerous part. Clara closed her eyes. Against her cheek, his heart was racing. It is, she whispered. Cade pulled back enough to look at her. The sun was beginning to gray the windows behind him. Chicago waited outside, wounded and awake. Clara touched the bruise along his jaw. But so is pretending I can stop. Cade looked at her as if the words had cut through the last wall he had left. For a moment, Clara thought he might argue. She could see it gather in him, the old instinct to command, to protect, to decide where danger ended, and she began. Then his shoulders lowered by a fraction, and the fight left his face. Not all of it, never all of it, but enough. He touched her cheek with the back of his fingers, careful despite the blood still drying near his wrist. You should hate me, he said. I do sometimes. His mouth tightened, but he did not look away. Clara kept her hand against his jaw. That doesn't mean I don't love you. Cade closed his eyes, and the breath he released sounded like something breaking quietly in a locked room. Around them, the safe house moved with low voices and heavy footsteps. Men came and went through the hallway. Phones rang, were answered, and went silent. Somewhere behind a closed door, Noah was speaking to someone in the clipped tone he used when fear had to become useful. Clara stood in the middle of it all with Cade's blood on her sleeve, and understood that she had crossed a line no one could draw for her anymore. She had not been dragged across it. She had walked. That mattered. Cade stepped back first. I need to finish this. I know. No, he said. You don't. Not all of it. Then tell me. His eyes sharpened. The old answer came to his mouth. She saw it. Nothing you need to know. Nothing you need to carry. Nothing that belongs in your hands. This time he swallowed it. The Kincaids hit 2 locations tonight. The warehouse fire was meant to pull men away from the north garage. The explosion near the tower was meant to send me into a panic and expose where you were being moved. Clara's stomach tightened. They wanted me out in the open. Yes. And you sent Noah, because they would expect Mason. They would expect my men. They would not expect your brother to move through the haze routes. That made a bitter kind of sense. Clara looked toward the hallway. So my family is involved now. They were always involved. Because of me, Cade's face hardened. Because Richard Hayes has spent 30 years making sure every debt in this city eventually touches his table. The safe house seemed colder. Clara had spent years trying not to think about her father's reach. Cade spoke of it as if it had edges, maps, numbers, names. What happens now? She asked. We make peace look possible. That doesn't sound like winning. It is not winning. It is stopping the bleeding long enough to see who is still holding a knife. Cade turned away, reaching for a clean shirt Mason had left over the back of a chair. Clara watched him move. Every motion was controlled, but pain dragged at the edges. He pulled the ruined shirt over his head, and for the first time she saw the full history written across his body. Old scars pale across his ribs, a dark bruise blooming near his shoulder, a raised line just under his collarbone. Her anger softened into something heavier. You said you wanted to teach, she said quietly. He paused with the clean shirt in his hand. Yes. Do you ever miss the man who wanted that Cade did not answer quickly? Then he said, I don't know if he was ever real. He may have been a story I told myself before the world corrected me. Clara walked closer and took the shirt from his hand. He let her help him into it, though the intimacy of the gesture made him go still. The world doesn't get to be the only author, she said. Cade looked down at her. The words stayed between them, fragile and dangerous. By sunrise, the first truce meeting had been arranged. It took place in a shuttered steakhouse near the river, a place with red leather booths and mirrors smoked by decades of power. Clara was told to stay at the safe house. She did not. When Cade stepped into the front room and found her waiting in a black coat, his expression turned very still. "No." Clara pulled on her gloves. "Good morning to you too. You are not coming. I am not going into the room. I am riding in the car." Clara. "No. You do not get to leave me behind with no answers after you just told me they used my movement as part of their plan." He looked past her to Noah, who stood by the door with his arms crossed. "You allowed this?" Noah gave him a tired look. "Allowed" is a strong word. Cade's gaze returned to Clara. She held it. "I am not asking to play soldier," she said. "I am asking not to be stored away like evidence." For a few seconds, Cade said nothing. Then he buttoned his coat. "You stay in the car with Noah." "Fine. You do not step out?" "Fine. If anything feels wrong, you leave." "I know." His voice lowered. "Say it." Clara stepped closer. "If anything feels wrong, I leave." Only then did he nod. The ride was silent except for the rain striking the windshield. Clara sat beside Noah in the back seat while Cade rode in front with Mason. The city outside looked washed and bruised, as if the night had not ended but simply learned how to hide in daylight. At the steakhouse, men were already waiting. Clara saw Wyatt Kincaid for the first time through the car window. He was not what she expected. Not huge, not loud, not visibly monstrous. He looked clean and almost charming, with dark hair, pale eyes, and a gray overcoat that fit perfectly. He smiled when Cade stepped from the car, and Clara felt a chill move through her. Some men wore danger like armor. Wyatt wore it like good manners. Noah leaned closer. "Do not stare." "I'm not. You are." Clara looked away, but not before Wyatt's eyes moved toward the car. He could not see her through the tint. Still, he smiled wider. Inside the restaurant, the meeting lasted 47 minutes. Clara counted every one. She watched men enter and leave through the side door. She watched Mason stand just inside the entrance, one hand visible, one not. She watched Cade through a gap in the blinds, once seated at the head of a table he did not own, looking like ownership had become unnecessary. When he came out, his face gave away nothing. That told Clara enough. Back at the safe house, Cade gathered his men in the dining room. Clara stood near the kitchen, trying to be invisible by habit. Cade looked at her. "Come here." Every man in the room noticed. Noah's head turned slightly. Mason's expression did not change, but his eyes sharpened. Clara walked in slowly. Cade did not explain her presence. He simply began. "The Kincaids agreed to a temporary border along the west freight routes. They will pay for the warehouse guard's family. They will return the north garage equipment by morning. In exchange, no open retaliation for 72 hours. One of Cade's lieutenants, a broad man named Grant, leaned forward. "And after 72 hours, we see who violates the terms first." Grant's mouth tightened. "Wyatt will." "Yes. Then why give him time?" Clara looked at the map spread across the table. Something about it pulled at her attention. Cade noticed. "What do you see?" Every man looked at her. Heat rose in her face, but she forced herself to step closer. The map showed the burned warehouse, the tower, the north garage, and 3 freight access points. Red marks, black marks, arrows. The logic of violence reduced to lines and blocks. Clara pointed to the north garage. This was not the real target. Grant gave a low laugh. "With respect, Miss Hayes, we lost 2 trucks there." Clara did not look at him. She kept her eyes on the map. "They wanted you to think the north garage mattered because it fits the pattern. Fire here, explosion here, theft here. It looks like escalation." Cade watched her. Clara moved her finger along the west freight route, but if they wanted to hurt Cade's operation, they would have hit this transfer point. It connects more routes. It would cost more money. Instead, they touched places with visibility. Mason stepped closer. Clara pointed to her own neighborhood on the map. Logan Square was not marked, but it sat just outside one of the lines. They are not mapping your business. They are mapping reaction time. How fast men move, who gets called first, who leaves which door, where I get taken. Silence filled the room. Not the ballroom silence. This one had weight. Cade looked at Mason. Mason leaned over the map, then his eyes moved once to Cade. She's right. Grant stopped smiling. Cade's gaze came back to Clara, and for one heartbeat she saw something in him that almost undid her. Pride, fear, wonder, all tangled together. Then he turned to the room. Change every route. No one uses the same vehicle twice. Noah moves with Clara until further notice. Mason, find who gave Wyatt our north garage schedule. The room shifted into motion. No one questioned why Clara had spoken. That was when she understood something had changed. Not enough, but something. That night back at the penthouse, Cade found Clara in the kitchen. She was barefoot, wearing one of his white shirts because her bag from the safe house had been brought up and half her clothes were still smoky. She stood over the counter eating toast because real food felt too complicated. Cade stopped in the doorway. What, she asked. You look like you belong here. The words were soft, but they hit a bruise. I do not know if that comforts me. I know. He crossed the room slowly. Clara set the toast down. Are you going to tell me I should not have spoken in the meeting? No. That I put myself in danger? You did. Cade. But you were right. That silenced her. He stopped on the other side of the counter, both hands resting on the edge. I have spent years making sure no one can see where I am vulnerable. Then you walked into a room and saw the pattern faster than men I pay to notice threats. You sound annoyed. I am terrified. Clara let out a small breath. Cade looked at her as if he were memorizing the sight. Then he said, Marry me. The toaster clicked behind her. Clara stared at him. That is not how normal people propose. I am aware. You did not even lead with a full conversation. I thought about it. And this was the improved version. A faint smile touched his mouth, then vanished. I do not know how to make this pretty, Clara. She came around the counter, heart beating too hard. Try. Cade reached into his coat pocket and took out a ring. It was not large, not showy. A gold band with a square-cut diamond, old and clear, the kind of ring that carried memory instead of performance. My mother's, he said. Clara's breath changed. Cade looked down at the ring, not at her. She wore it until the day she died. My father kept it in a safe. After he was killed, I took it before my uncle could sell anything that still had a soul attached to it. The room blurred slightly. He looked up. I am not asking because the city expects it. I am not asking because it solves danger. It may create more. I am asking because I do not want you standing beside me without a name I am willing to answer for. Clara's eyes burned. That sounds like possession. It is, he said, and promise, and fear, and love. I do not know how to separate them cleanly. She should have needed time. A wiser woman might have asked for it, but Clara had spent her whole life with men deciding what her choices meant. This one belonged to her, reckless or not. She held out her hand. Yes. Cade did not move for a second. Then he slid the ring onto her finger with a care so complete it made the world narrow to that single touch. His hand shook once. Only once. Clara covered it with her own. The wedding happened 6 days later in a judge's private office above a law firm downtown. Rain streaked the windows. Traffic groaned below. Noah stood behind Clara with red eyes and a jaw clenched hard enough to crack. Mason stood behind Cade, silent as stone. Clara wore a simple white dress she had designed herself the night before, clean lines, long sleeves, no veil. She had sewn a tiny blue stitch into the hem because Molly had once told her every bride deserved something blue. Cade wore a dark suit. When he saw her, he stopped in the doorway. No one else in the room mattered after that. The judge spoke. Clara answered. Cade answered. Their signatures dried on paper. A ring settled on his hand, simple gold against scarred knuckles. When the judge pronounced them husband and wife, Cade did not kiss her immediately. He waited. Clara smiled through tears. "You can kiss your wife, Cade." The word wife moved through him like a prayer. Then he kissed her slow and fierce and careful all at once. For 3 months, life softened. Not into safety. Clara was not foolish enough to call it that. But into rhythm. She redesigned the penthouse kitchen because Cade's idea of luxury had somehow excluded reachable shelves. She brought in plants, books, a green chair from her old apartment that Cade claimed was ugly and sat in every night. She worked from the home office, taking clients who no longer disappeared once her new last name became known. That bothered her. The advantage, the fear disguised as respect. She tried not to use it. Sometimes she failed. Cade came home most nights for dinner. On the nights he did not, Clara learned not to ask every question her fear invented. Instead, she trained herself to read what mattered. Was he injured? Was he silent? Did Mason call first? Did Noah come by with that careful face? Then a girl disappeared. Her name was Lena Kincaid, 16, Wyatt's niece. She vanished outside a private school in Lincoln Park on a Tuesday afternoon. The news called it a suspected kidnapping. The Kincaids called it an act of war. Cade came home that night with his face locked down. "I did not take her," he said before Clara asked. She believed him immediately. That frightened her how quickly belief came now. What do they want? To make people think I did. 3 days later, Lena was found alive in an old Mercer warehouse, drugged, dehydrated, terrified, wrapped in a blanket that had Cade's company mark stamped on the corner. Police arrived at the penthouse before sunrise. Cade put on a suit while Clara stood in the bedroom doorway, barefoot and cold. "You are not going with me," he said. She laughed once. "You are being arrested and you are giving me instructions. I am turning myself in before they drag me out for cameras." "Then I am coming." "No." She stepped closer. Cade's face was calm, but his eyes were not. "Clara, listen to me. This is not a room where my name protects you. If you step into it, they write you into the story. I am already in the story." His jaw tightened. Mason appeared at the doorway. "We need to move." Cade looked at Clara like he was trying to memorize her and leave at the same time. She gripped his lapels and pulled him down. "Do not confess to anything you did not do just to keep the city calm." His eyes flashed. "I am many things. Stupid is not one of them." "No, but noble gets men killed too." For one moment his mouth softened. Then he kissed her forehead and left. Clara lasted 20 minutes. Then she called Noah. "I need you to take me to the police station." "No, I know where she was kept." Silence. Noah's voice changed. "What did you say?" "The warehouse. The one they found Lena in. I was there for 5 days during the renovation." Clara. "I have invoices, contractor logs, security upgrades, camera timestamps. If Lena had been there when they claimed someone would have seen her." Noah exhaled hard. "I'm downstairs in 5. The police station smelled like old coffee-wet wool and fluorescent exhaustion. Clara walked in with a folder under one arm and Noah at her side. Reporters waited outside behind barricades shouting Cade's name like it belonged to them. Inside, Cade's lawyer argued with a detective near the front desk. When he saw Clara, his expression collapsed into alarm. "Mrs. Mercer, you should not be here. Where is my husband?" The word husband steadied her. The lawyer hesitated. Noah stepped forward. "Answer her." They let Clara see Cade after an hour. He sat in an interrogation room, hands visible on the table. There was a red mark on one wrist from the cuffs. His face was unreadable until she entered. Then everything in him went still. "No," he said. Clara sat across from him. "Yes." A detective stood by the wall with a notebook. Cade did not look at him. "You need to leave. I have evidence." "Clara." She opened the folder and spread the papers across the table. "On the dates, they claim Lena was held in that warehouse. I had crews installing lighting, repairing drywall, replacing locks, and wiring cameras. Here are the invoices. Here are the delivery receipts. Here are the names of 6 workers. Here are the photographs I took because I wanted to change the entryway color." The detective stepped closer. Cade stared at her. Clara met his eyes. "You told me truth was better than a pretty lie. So stop trying to protect me from the truth when it can save you." His voice came out low. "They will come after you for this. They already did." For the first time, Cade looked afraid in front of someone else. Not for himself. For her. The charges began to crack by evening. By the next day, they split open. By the third, the story changed. Lena had not been kept in the warehouse. She had been moved there hours before she was found. The blanket had been planted. The lock had been opened with an old access code tied to a Kincaid lieutenant named Owen Voss, who disappeared before police could find him. Cade was released just after dusk. He did not speak to reporters. He did not speak in the car. He did not speak when they reached the safe house instead of the penthouse. Only when the door closed behind them did his control finally fail. He sat on the edge of the bed and put his head in his hands. Clara stood before him, still wearing the same clothes from the station. "I am fine," she said. "No, you are not. You are free." "No," he said, voice rough. "I am not." She knelt in front of him. Cade looked at her then, and the devastation in his face was worse than anger. "My love for you is the cleanest weapon anyone has ever found against me." Clara did not flinch. "Yes, they did not have to touch you. They only had to put you in the line of fire and wait for me to lose judgment. Yes. I need you to leave." "No." "Clara." "No." He stood so quickly she had to rise with him. "I cannot keep doing this. Every day you stay, someone learns another way to reach me through you. Then teach me how not to be reached." His eyes narrowed. "What I am done waiting in locked rooms. I am done being moved from car to car. I am done being the thing everyone protects, hides, threatens, or uses. You are my wife. I know. That is why I am saying this to you and not asking permission from your men." Cade's face tightened. Clara stepped closer. "You want me safe. I want to be capable. Those are not enemies unless you make them enemies. You want a gun, I want training, security, routes, names, exits. I want to know how to tell when a room is wrong before someone has to pull me out of it. I want Noah to teach me how to fight. I want Mason to teach me how to spot surveillance. I want you to stop confusing ignorance with innocence." Cade stared at her like she had spoken a language he had spent his life refusing to learn. "No." Clara nodded once. "Then you are the cage." The words landed hard. She saw him absorb them, resist them, bleed from them in some place no one could bandage. He turned away and stood facing the dark window. For a long time, the only sound was the city outside and Clara's own pulse. When Cade finally spoke, his voice was quiet. "I hate the idea of your hands learning violence." Clara moved beside him. So do I. I hate that loving me requires this. I know. I hate that you are right. She looked up at him. That was not surrender, but it was a door opening. Cade turned toward her. His eyes were tired, haunted, and still dangerous. You train with Noah first, defensive only. Mason teaches surveillance. You do not carry a weapon until I say you are ready. Clara lifted an eyebrow. Until we agree, I am ready. A shadow of a smile moved through the exhaustion on his face. You are impossible. I learned from you. For the first time since his arrest, Cade touched her. One hand at her waist, one at the back of her neck, his forehead lowering to hers. You are not a liability, he said. Clara closed her eyes. Then stop treating me like one. His arms tightened around her. Outside, Chicago kept breathing through sirens, rain secrets, and blood. Inside, Clara stood in the arms of the man everyone feared and felt the shape of her life change again. Not safer, not simpler, but more her own. Training began before Clara was ready, which meant it began at the right time. Noah met her in an empty boxing gym on the south side just after dawn, long before the city shook itself awake. The place smelled like leather dust, old sweat and coffee gone bitter in a paper cup. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The ring sat in the center of the room, ropes sagging slightly canvas-stained by years of men trying to prove something with their fists. Clara stood near the lockers in black leggings and an old sweatshirt, arms folded tight against her body. Noah tossed her a pair of wraps. You know how to use these Noma good. Means you have less to unlearn. She caught them against her chest. That sounded almost supportive. I am supporting you. You look like you're preparing to bury me. Noah's mouth twitched, but the humor did not reach his eyes. I taught you to ride a bike. I taught you how to lie to Dad without blinking. I taught you how to climb out the kitchen window when you were 16 and grounded. I remember. This is different. I know. No, he said, stepping closer. You don't. Not yet. Learning how to survive this world changes how you see every room you enter. You stop seeing doors as doors. You see exits. You stop seeing strangers as strangers. You see hands, shoulders, weight shifts, eyes. You start noticing who is watching you, and then one day you realize you cannot stop noticing. Clara looked down at the wraps in her hands. Are you trying to scare me? I am trying to give you the choice no one gave us. That silenced her. Noah took her hands and showed her how to wrap them. Around the wrist, across the palm, between the fingers, tight enough to protect, loose enough to move. First rule, he said. You do not fight to win. You fight to leave. The first lesson was ugly. Clara was too slow, too tense, too angry at how weak she felt. Noah taught her how to break a wrist grip. She failed 6 times. On the 7th, she got free and stumbled backward into the ropes. Noah nodded once. Again. By the end of the hour, her arms trembled and her throat burned with swallowed curses. A bruise bloomed on her forearm. Her knuckles hurt inside the wraps. Cade was waiting outside when she stepped into the alley. He leaned against the black car hands in his coat pockets, face unreadable. Clara stopped. You said you wouldn't watch. I didn't. You waited. Yes. That is almost worse. His eyes moved over her, catching the bruise before she could hide it. Noah came out behind her. She did fine. Cade did not look at him. I know. Clara heard the strain under those 2 words. Not anger. Restraint. She walked to him and held out her bruised arm. Look at it. His jaw tightened. Clara, look. He did. It is a bruise, she said. Not a tragedy. His gaze lifted to hers. In my world, bruises are often promises. Then let this one promise I am learning. Something shifted in him then. It was not acceptance, not fully, but it was the first crack in his refusal to see her as breakable. He opened the car door. Clara got in because she chose to. Over the next 2 months, her body changed first, then her mind. Mason taught her surveillance in parking lots, train stations, hotel lobbies, and restaurants where the mirrors showed more than the people did. He taught her to notice shoes because people changed coats more often than shoes. He taught her to read the rhythm of a tale, to take 3 turns and never believe the first clean street. He taught her how to walk toward light, toward cameras, toward noise. Noah taught her how to fall without losing the air in her lungs, how to drive her heel down on an instep, how to turn fear into motion before it froze her. Cade taught her nothing at first. He only watched the aftermath, the bruises, the exhaustion, the way she entered rooms now and paused near the door without realizing it. One night he found her in the penthouse hallway practicing how to slip from a wrist hold. She moved too sharply, lost balance, and hit her shoulder against the wall. Cade was beside her before she could breathe. "I'm fine," she snapped. "I didn't say you weren't." "You thought it loudly." His mouth almost curved. Clara rubbed her shoulder, annoyed with the sting in her eyes. "I hate this. I know. I hate that I need it. I know. I hate that part of me feels stronger and another part feels like something gentle is being taken apart." Cade's face changed. He stepped closer slowly, the way he always did when tenderness frightened him. "Come here." She did. He drew her in one hand at the back of her head, the other flat against her spine. He did not tell her to stop training. He did not say he would protect her instead. He just held her while the shaking moved through and out of her. That was when she understood he had changed too. Not into a soft man, not into a safe one, but into a man who could stand beside her fear without trying to own it. The final trouble with Wyatt Kincaid began with small things. A brick through the window of the cafe where Clara used to work. A florist client who found a dead crow tied to her back gate. An anonymous message left under the windshield wiper of Clara's old neighbor's car. Not threats against Cade. Threats against Clara's former life. The places she had belonged before him. She sat at Cade's office table with photographs spread before her, forcing herself to look at each one without flinching. Cade stood by the window, his entire body too still. Mason pointed to the map. All 3 locations connect to her old routine, cafe client neighborhood. Noah leaned over the table. "Wyatt is trying to prove Cade cannot protect everything attached to her." Cade turned from the window. "Then I remove Wyatt." The room chilled. Clara looked up. "No." Every man went quiet. Cade's eyes found hers. "This is not a discussion. It is if you want me beside you." His face tightened, but he said nothing. Clara stood and walked to the map. Her heart beat hard, but her voice came out steady. "He wants you angry. He knows you will rush toward anything with my name on it. That is the pattern he is building." Mason's gaze sharpened. Clara pointed to the marked locations. "These are not attacks. They are a trail. He is moving you toward Logan Square because that is where you will feel the most guilt. He thinks guilt makes you predictable." Cade stared at the map. Clara looked at him. "Does it?" The question landed in the center of the room. Cade's jaw flexed once. "Yes." Noah lowered his eyes. Mason went still. Clara stepped closer to Cade. "Then we do not give him what he studied." For a long moment, Cade looked at her as if the war inside him had turned physical. Then he said, "What do you see?" Clara breathed. She laid out the route. A visible Mercer response through the cafe. Mason and 2 cars moving loud enough to be noticed. Noah taking Clara's old neighborhood, but only a shadow, not bait. Cade staying out of sight until Wyatt committed to the wrong door. There was one compromised contact in Wyatt's circle, a man Mason had been feeding false scraps for weeks. Clara suggested using him to leak that Cade planned to personally visit her old apartment building at midnight. Cade listened without interrupting. When she finished, he looked at Mason. "Can it work?" Mason nodded. "Yes." Cade looked back at Clara. "And where are you during this?" "With Noah." "No." She lifted her chin. "Not in the center. Not hidden in a panic room. Close enough to read the movement if something changes." "No," he said again, softer and more dangerous. Clara walked to him until they were almost touching. "You said I was not a liability. You are not. Then trust the woman you trained. I did not train you for bait." "I am not bait. I am the person Wyatt thinks you cannot think around." Cade's eyes closed for 1 second. When he opened them, something had surrendered. Not his fear, his control of her. Beside Noah, he said, "Not one step away." Clara nodded. That night, Chicago held its breath. Rain fell thin and cold. Streetlights trembled on wet pavement. The old apartment building looked smaller than Clara remembered, brick darkened by weather windows glowing in scattered squares. She sat in Noah's car half a block away, dressed in black hair tucked under a cap, a small radio in her ear. Her hands were steady in her lap. That steadiness surprised her. Noah noticed. "You okay?" "No." "Good. Okay gets people stupid." She almost smiled. The false leak worked. At 11:58, a dark sedan appeared near the alley behind her old building. 2 men got out, then a third. Wyatt Kincaid stepped from the passenger side wearing a gray coat and no visible weapon. He looked calm, almost bored. Clara's stomach turned. She touched her radio. "He's here." Cade's voice came through low and controlled. "I see him." The sound of his voice steadied something in her chest. Wyatt moved toward the service entrance exactly where Clara had predicted. Mason's visible cars drew 2 of his men away. Noah shifted in the driver's seat ready. Then Wyatt stopped. He looked toward Noah's car, not directly, just enough. Clara felt the old freeze rise in her body. Noah whispered, "Do not move." Wyatt smiled. Then he turned and entered the alley. The trap closed quickly. No shouting, no dramatic chase, just men moving out of darkness with brutal precision. Mason appeared behind one of Wyatt's guards. Cade stepped from the shadow near the service door as if the night had handed him over. Clara could not hear what was said. She saw Wyatt's smile fade. She saw Cade lean close. She saw a choice pass through him. The old Cade would have ended it there. Clara knew that without being told. The old Cade would have left the alley with 1 less enemy and 1 more ghost. Instead, Cade stepped back. Police lights flashed at the far end of the street. Not ordinary police. The kind Cade could move when moving them served his purpose. Federal agents took Wyatt Kincaid in cuffs. Noah exhaled beside her. Clara did not move until Cade looked across the wet street and found her through the windshield. Even from that distance she saw it. He had wanted blood. He had chosen something else. Later at the penthouse, Cade removed his coat in silence. Clara stood near the kitchen island, still cold from the rain. "Did you want to kill him?" she asked. "Yes." The answer did not surprise her. "Why didn't you?" Cade looked at the city beyond the glass. "Because you were right. About the plan, about guilt making me predictable." He turned to her. "And because I want our future to require fewer ghosts." Clara crossed the room and put her arms around him. This time, when he held her, there was no panic in his grip. Only weight. Only choice. Winter passed into spring. The city thawed by inches. Ice loosened along the river. People returned to patios too early, wrapped in coats and stubborn hope. Clara's business grew not always for reasons she liked, but she learned how to choose her clients with sharper eyes. Cade came home for dinner more often than not. Sometimes he still left in the middle of the night. Sometimes he returned with silence on him like another coat. She learned which questions to ask. Are you hurt? Is Noah safe? Do I need to pack a bag? The other questions waited not forgotten, but understood. One Tuesday morning, Clara stood in the bathroom staring at two pink lines. The whole penthouse was quiet. Outside, sunrise spread pale gold over Lake Michigan. She sat on the edge of the tub with the test in her hand and laughed once too softly to be called joy yet. Then she cried. Cade found her there 10 minutes later. He stopped in the doorway, taking in her face, the test, the stillness. What is it? She held it out. He looked at it. For the first time since she had known him, Cade Mercer sat down because his legs seemed to forget the rest of him. Clara wiped her cheek. You scare half the city before breakfast, but this is what does it. His eyes lifted to hers. Yes. The honesty broke her open. He reached for her, then stopped himself. She saw the instinct, the fear of making her fragile again. Clara took his hand and placed it flat against her stomach. There is nothing to protect yet, she whispered. There is everything to protect. Cade. His eyes closed. When he opened them, they were bright with terror and wonder. I do not know how to give a child a normal life. Then we give them an honest one. I want them to have choices. Then we start now. His thumb moved once over the soft fabric of her shirt. No cages, he said. No cages, she answered. Their son was born during a storm in late November. Thunder rolled over Chicago while Clara gripped Cade's hand hard enough to make one of the nurses wince. Cade did not move. Not when she cursed at him. Not when she cried. Not when fear flashed through his face so nakedly that Clara almost laughed between contractions. When the baby finally cried, the sound cut through the room with impossible force. Cade went still. The nurse placed the child against Clara's chest, small and furious and alive. Dark hair, red face, fists clenched like he had arrived ready to argue with the world. Clara touched his cheek. Hi, she whispered. Cade stood beside the bed, white-faced eyes fixed on his son. Do you want to hold him? Clara asked. He looked afraid to answer. The nurse helped place the baby in his arms. Cade held him like a sacred object. Like a weapon he refused to let the world load. Like a promise too small to survive unless he became something larger around it. The baby quieted. Cade's face broke. Not loudly. A single tear moved down his cheek and he did nothing to hide it. I am sorry, he whispered. Clara heard him. For what? He looked at their son. For the world. Clara reached for his sleeve. Then help me change the part of it we can. Years softened the sharpest edges without removing them. Their son Samuel grew into a watchful child with Cade's eyes and Clara's stubborn mouth. He learned early that men lowered their voices around his father. He learned that Uncle Noah kept candy in one pocket and a knife in the other. He learned that Mason smiled only when he thought no one saw. Clara watched carefully for cages. She and Cade argued often about schools, security, birthday parties, sleepovers, which doors needed guards and which fears belonged to the past. Sometimes Cade lost the argument. Sometimes Clara did. Sometimes they met in the difficult middle and called it love. One evening, when Samuel was 5, they attended a charity gala at the Art Institute. Clara wore deep blue again. This time she chose it without regret. The hall glittered with chandeliers and glass. Music moved softly beneath conversation. Donors, politicians, businessmen, and women in diamonds turned as Cade entered with Samuel at his side. The room quieted. Not completely. Enough. Clara felt the old memory rise. The first ballroom. The first silence. The first look. Samuel felt it too. His small hand tightened around Cade's fingers. Daddy, he whispered. "Do I have to go in?" Cade stopped. Half the room watched him. Chicago's most dangerous man lowered himself to one knee in the middle of all that polished attention. "No," he said. "You choose." Samuel looked at the room, then at Clara. She smiled. He took one breath, then stepped forward on his own. Cade rose and looked across the room at Clara. No command, no claim, no cage. Just recognition. The silence that had once marked the beginning of danger now held something else. A choice made in the open. A life built inside the cost. A love that had not erased the darkness but had learned how to keep a light burning anyway.